Welcome to my short, sharp, and shiny little share today about the physical effects of menopause in my 4-session series, The Magic in Menopause. So, hello to you watching. Great to have you here. And I'll just allow a little bit of extra time for people to join. And in the meantime, I'll just give a little bit of a background about me. So I'm a women's holistic lifestyle coach. I'm doing some additional study in functional medicine, and I'm really passionate about helping women create their own kind of well-being and health that makes sense for them and resonates with them. And it's something that's part of what can be part of their lifestyle for the long term. I just celebrated my 1-year anniversary of my going into menopause in March this year. So this is really important to me as well as to my clients. And this is also an introduction to give a bit of a sneak peek into what I share about menopause and in the preparation of me launching my 6-week menopause course, which starts at the end of this month. And what's going to happen in that course is it's designed for women who don't have a lot of time to do the research, that there's so much information out there now, which is amazing. But what that can mean too is that it's how to decipher that and filter that in a way that is relevant to you and your symptoms. And perhaps even you're here because you're not suffering as such any symptoms yet, but you kind of want to get an idea of what's to come. Or maybe you're on the other side, but you can still feel there's some lingering things going on that aren't ideal, and that maybe you might get some little tidbits today that'll help you in working out, sort of navigating what else you can be doing. So let's get cracking. So today is about the physical effects of menopause and what you might be feeling, but also I'm going to dial it back, and this today will also include a bit about actually what menopause is. So let's get cracking. We've got, okay, menopause. So here's some stats just quickly. So typically the process of menopause begins roughly between the ages of 45 and 55, and that looking at the stats, 20% of women have no menopausal symptoms, about 60% have mild to moderate symptoms, and about 20% have severe symptoms that really impact their daily life. And those symptoms may last from a few months through to even 10 years in some cases. Some women will go into menopause even in their 30s, and some will go into instant menopause if they've had to have a hysterectomy or had cancer treatment and they're on estrogen blockers. There are lots of scenarios outside of natural menopause. And there are at least 34 symptoms, and that essentially there are 3 primary symptom areas broken into these 3 groups of vasomotor, which is like the hot flashes type of ones. Then you've got the ones to do with dryness, which is not just vaginal dryness, but that's also mouth and skin and eye dryness too are all related. And then there's the category of the difficulty sleeping and insomnia type of symptoms as well. Essentially, all of these symptoms come back to remind us of the importance and influence of estrogen, mainly estrogen in our body. And so we can look at improving each symptom, or we can be looking for the root cause. So, right, what is menopause? Well, let's go even before menopause is what we call premenopause, and that's your reproductive years. From your first period up to when your ovaries start declining in their ability to produce your sex hormones. Perimenopause is the years leading up to menopause, and that is like the average is around the 45 years mark. And then menopause is the 12-month anniversary after your final menstruation. And it's literally just that one day. And that's why I said, like, my 1-year anniversary was on the 17th of March this year. So I did have some false starts where I went for like 6 months without a period, and then I had one, and then I went 4 months without a period and had another one, and then I had my 12 months and nothing since then. And my joke about that is um, why women who are postmenopausal wear white jeans and white pants is because they can with confidence. Anyway, so back to it. Then postmenopause is from the day after that 12-month anniversary onwards for the rest of our lives. So what happens in menopause, perimenopause? Well, that's the process where your ovaries gradually stop working and they don't release any more eggs. So ovulation, where the egg is released, may initially become very erratic and lengthen the cycles, or it might shorten them, and the flow may become irregular before you have that final period. And so then what is really important here is that this thing of understanding how menopause is the transition of your sex hormones producing your being produced by your ovaries, that they then change to being produced by your adrenal glands. So I think of it like having two factories. It's like the first factory that makes our sex hormones is our ovaries, and then that gets then switched over to our adrenal glands, which are like these little jelly bean type glands that sit on top of each kidney. The thing is that our adrenal glands also produce our adrenaline and our cortisol, which are our two stress hormones, and that we've been pumping those hormones out for a very long time by the time we get to menopause, so that then by the time it gets to the point where those adrenals need to produce sex hormones as well, often they don't have the capacity. There's just not enough energy and capacity for them to produce it. So essentially, when we experience symptoms, it's a sign that our adrenal glands are overworked or fatigued and unable to produce enough sex hormones for us to have no symptoms. So menopausal symptoms are a sign that we're not producing enough sex hormones. So the aim here is to help and support your adrenal glands and the rest of your body to produce sufficient amounts. And just a note here that this also happens to men. So their testes, which would normally produce their sex hormones, they go through this transition as well. And then their adrenals will produce their sex hormones. And this transition for them is called andropause. And roughly happens around the same time as it does for women, and it can manifest in different ways. So sometimes men will develop anxiety, depression, their body fat distribution will change too. Sometimes for them, that's when they go out and they buy a Harley or a sports car, or they do something really out of character. So it's important for them to know this as well, and also for us to know it's not just us. So just to quickly explain to you that we have three types of estrogen, because a lot of this discussion about menopause is about estrogen. So if you look at that bottom long line, estrogen is what we create. We generate this from our first period onwards for the rest of our lives. And that's the weakest form of estrogen, but it's the one that we'll continue producing, and that's the one we rely on after we go through menopause, which can be produced by our adrenal glands and our fat cells. Then we've got estradiol, which is the one that we produce from our first to our last period through our reproductive years, allows us to get pregnant. And then we produce estriol only when we're pregnant. So we've got those three that then we can have tested as well when we get hormone tests done. So then looking at our hormone production, and this may look a bit technical, but this is just to give you an overview. There's a few things here that I would really like you to kind of take from today as far as how we produce our hormones. So looking at this chart, we produce our sex hormones from cholesterol, because so often we get told that cholesterol is the baddie, but actually we need that building block in order to be able to make our sex hormones. So from cholesterol, if you look down the left pathway from pregnenolone, master hormone, we produce progesterone, which can then get converted into cortisol. So Then on the right-hand side, we've got down that right pathway to DHEA, testosterone, and then to estrogen. So interestingly, you may not know that we also produce testosterone, not just men, and it's really important for us too, but a lot of that gets converted into estrogen for us. So common issues in hormone production, one is that the cholesterol is not converting into those hormones, which can leave us with high cholesterol. So that's a sign that there's an imbalance. Two, it can be if we've got high stress, then we're producing more of that cortisol hormone. And then that means that we're sacrificing progesterone because we're making it into cortisol. And progesterone is our feel-good mood balancing hormone, the anti-anxiety, anti-depression hormone. So that's why it can be really good for us to be able to do things to decrease our stress. So then our adrenals might not be producing enough estrogen. So estrogen receptors in our fat cells create it, which leads to more belly fat. Okay, so just quickly, we've got some common reasons for symptoms. So if you've been taking the birth control pill most of your reproductive life because maybe you had PCOS or painful periods, which often is estrogen dominance, when you were younger, that then when you come off of the pill, that just shows up as these menopausal symptoms because it's saying that there was an issue back then that hasn't been addressed, a hormonal imbalance. It might be because you've got a viral load, you've got viruses in your system and they wrap themselves in fat cells, and that can then block some of the pathways that help us to be able to have healthy hormones. And it can also be inflammation, leaky gut, toxic load, an autoimmune issue, sluggish liver. There's lots of different reasons. And the reason I'm presenting this is just to show you that there's a lot of underlying causes to the symptoms that you might be experiencing. So let's look at some of these symptoms. So we've got hot flushes as a classic. So what I've been finding through my sort of investigation in this is that a lot of that can be to do with blood sugar issues. So if you restrict your sugar and less or no alcohol, especially at night, I find that can really help. It could be from processed meats, cheese, and red wine. So having a girls' night with all those things, you might have worse hot flushes. And also the stress part. So if you can decrease your stress response in your body, that can really help to stop or reduce those hot flushes. And in that little beige circle there, you could try tart cherry juice, which you can get from, if you're in Australia, Chemist Warehouse in the fridge there, and you just take like half a cup. Drink half a cup at night before you go to bed can help some people with hot flushes. Or otherwise myo-inositol is vitamin B8, and that's what I personally use, and that has just subsided my hot flushes in the day and at night. So just a couple of things you might like to try. Then disrupted sleep. So sometimes that can be a bladder issue, waking up needing to go to the toilet because estrogen can help with bladder control. Night sweats, same as what I was saying about the hot flushes. And the overthinking part, if you're waking up and you just can't go back to sleep thinking about everything, can be from less progesterone, leading us to be more anxious because progesterone is our mood stabilizing hormone. And that when we're not ovulating anymore, we're not creating this cascade effect of producing more progesterone. Then belly fat, that's such a classic menopausal symptom, which is when our adrenal glands, which are now producing our sex hormones, they're not producing enough, then our estrogen receptors in our fat cells start to then kick in and start producing estrogen, which means those fat cells become activated and fill up. So then, and where have we got most of our fat cells? So we've got layers of fat cells in our abdominal cavity, in our abdominal wall. So then they start to increase. So basically bringing it back to what can we do, then that's where looking at trying to decrease our stress, definitely is a really good place to start. Also, toxins in our fat cells can be a problem. So the accumulation over years and years can lead us to being toxic, not fat. And then also cellulite can seem more apparent when we're in this stage of life. And then that can be because our elasticity in our skin isn't as strong, and that then those little bits of connective tissue that attach our skin into the lower layers of our sort of from our skin to our fat cells, that becomes less elastic, and then it just shows as dimples in the skin. So if we can empty out those fat cells of the toxins, that can be a really good way to help. Vaginal dryness. So we've got the estrogen that controls, and also androgens, which control the lubrication. So dryness and atrophy are both signs of low estrogen. So there are creams and suppositories that can help with that. There are natural creams available too. And the irregular periods. I remember reading something recently that was talking about crime scene periods. Well, that's because as those levels of both estrogen that fluctuates, that determines the thickness of the uterine lining, and then the progesterone controls the bleed. So between the two of those things, that can fluctuate how much both lining is coming out during a menstrual period and how much like the quantity of the blood as well. So, and then bone density. So just the last point I wanted to make was that we can lose up to 10% of our bone mass in that first 5 years after menopause. So getting sufficient vitamin C, D, and K2 is really important in conjunction with weight-bearing exercise to stimulate that bone density process. So now that just proves I can't stick to 10 minutes, but I do have all these tips here to help. So I'm going to post these in this event, and I will also do that in my group so that then you can have these to take away and to think about, and also to then implement into your daily lifestyles if you can. So it's about reducing stress, reducing toxins, some general supplement suggestions. Bearing in mind, I'm not a doctor, but these are just some generic supplement suggestions that you can also check with your GP or your specialist that it will fit in with your regime. Adding some anabolic exercise, avoiding cardio is always a good thing. And then helping to produce more building blocks for your hormone production with, I recommend a Mediterranean diet. Some may benefit from keto because of that extra fat, but Mediterranean is a nice balanced diet. And then also, if you're keen to get more help, please just reach out, book a complimentary 20-minute discovery call with me via the link in Facebook or Instagram, or you can message me, of course. And I'd love to see you for next week's installment, which is all about the mental effects of menopause.